What up? What up? What up? What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It is me, Molly Ruland. We are back live from the living room. I have a very special guest today. I'm sure you guys have been missing me terribly over the last couple days, but I have kind of had to pull back a little bit from doing a daily show because it's just a lot of work. But I'm really excited to have my guest on today. It's a good friend of mine who I met producing a podcast for him. And he's just one of my favorite people. So I'm excited to introduce him. I just wanted to take a moment to share with you a little bit of my excitement. I know things are really hard right now, but we have a whole future in front of us, and we are full of life. And it's up to us to navigate this next path. So if you're feeling a little bit down today or a little out of sorts, take some of my energy. I got it in spades. I'm excited. I'm ready for the challenge ahead, and I got your back. So if you need some of that, help yourself. Let's just figure out, how we get through the day. Maybe tomorrow will be better. So thank you for tuning in. I appreciate all the support and my new comedic fans. I appreciate you. My mom always told me I should be a stand-up comic. So maybe it's my time to shine. But without further ado, I want to bring in Pedro da Costa. He is the what? Tell me again. Wait, hold on. Let me put your title up. It's the senior reporter at Market News International. What's up, Pedro?
How you doing, Molly? Good to be with you.
Yeah, man, it's always a pleasure to see you. I am just setting up these cameras and stuff over here, so don't mind me. But I am super excited that you are here because I always love talking with you. Why isn't this working? And so I'm excited for our conversation today. I'm excited just to kind of check in with you and see what's going on. So yeah, man. So introduce yourself to everybody, who you are, what you do, all that fun stuff.
My name is Pedro da Costa. I'm a reporter, and I've been covering financial news for the better part of 20 years now. And financial news is now kind of back in the headlines now that we have a public health crisis that's also turned into an economic slump, and we're basically headed into the worst. You don't have to quote me. The International Monetary Fund just said that we're heading for the worst recession since the Great Depression. And I think the depression comparisons are apt, even if this is a public health led crisis rather than a financially triggered one. And so, I've been busy trying to talk to as many intelligent people as I can and keeping people informed on what's going on with our financial system and what's going on with efforts by the government to help people in need, and the shortcomings and failures of those efforts, and the positives and the negatives, and basically trying to stay on top of it. And at the same time, like every other reporter, I think trying to become a sort of quack epidemiologist in the sense of staying up with the data on how long this thing is going to last, what the estimates are for worst case scenarios, and that sort of thing, because that affects the economic outlook, obviously. So that's what I've been up to. So yeah,
No big deal. Just
no big
hanging
deal.
out, hanging out. Well,
But I'm also full of positive energy like you, because I really, I mean, this is a horrible time. I think people are experiencing it very differently because, people that have jobs like ours that are sort of the knowledge-based white-collar economy, if you will.
right.
We have the privilege of working remotely and not exposing ourselves to crowds. We're a lot of essential workers that we don't usually, or some people don't often think of them as essential, but they really are.
Right.
Now we're seeing just how essential they are, and they're not being paid adequately. They're not getting enough protection. And my wife actually works for the Washington Post, has been doing amazing work on that because she covers the retail sector, which normally is an interesting sector anyway, but now it's the front line. So she's talking to people who are just afraid to go to work, deathly afraid to go to work on a daily basis. So that helps you put things in perspective,
Mm.
and yeah, and I'm positive about the pause that this offers to humanity, the ability to rethink how we organize our economy, the revival of Mother Earth's, spirits. I mean, she seems to be trying to send us a message in terms of the absence of pollution in the worst industrial areas of India and China. You can see
Right.
you can see the fish in Venice.
Right.
And so I think we need to rethink how we eventually re-enter economic activity while doing less damage to our mom.
Yeah. Well, I think that like it's inevitable, right? Like, and I've kind of felt this way the whole time since this thing like jumped off. But the more I think about it, the more like hopeful I am because, like schools might not go back in a session, maybe even not even next year, right? So like people can't go back to work. Like assuming that they even have a job, like it's not going to be possible because now they have 3 kids at home for another 6 months. So like employers are going to have to look at things differently, like flex working and like working from home. Like this is a new normal and like I'm here for it. Like I think working from home will be a lot more enjoyable for people when they're allowed to leave their homes, right? Like working from home doesn't always have to mean like you can't go out, right? It
Exactly.
just means that you're not commuting and you're not paying $300 to park in DuPont Circle and you're not like behind the wheel of your car like screaming at people who are taking all of your joy, right? Like
And
you're
you and
not
I
like
have both had that privileged experience of like having that flexibility before, right?
right.
In different times. So
Yeah.
I had a job where I worked from home for 2 years, and so I found it quite useful, and I got to be flexible in the true sense of the word, in the sense that I got to get work
Totally.
done when I felt most productive. I got to spend more time with my family, and
Right.
and it was all good. I mean, it doesn't work for everybody, I don't think, and that's okay.
Right.
But that's just the beginning. All
The
the ways that
beginning. Yeah.
the ways that we communicate the need for, like, how many conferences do we actually need to go to as opposed to attending remotely, and the money that gets spent. It would be a
Dude.
lot of reevaluation, right?
Dude, huge. Like I went to Food Expo West last year, which is like the largest like food expo in the country, and it's in Anaheim across from Disney World in the largest convention center I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, the thing is ridiculous. It's like 10 times the size of our convention center,
Yeah.
and like, just a footprint, just to have a 50 by 50 booth is like $85,000. And that's probably low. Like millions and millions and millions of dollars are spent. And like, I'm looking at like Vita Coco's like fake beach that they built. I'm like, is that why coconut water is $2.97 a bottle? Because like maybe if you guys didn't spend all this, and that's just the money on like the booth and the space. That's not like transporting that booth there. That's not all the samples they gave away. That's not, and then you just look at everything and you're wondering like, how is this sustainable? Like, did Kind Bars really like, why is Kind Bars given away at every single event? Why don't they just charge 50 cents a bar instead of $1.89 and stop giving the freaking things away at every event? Because every event I've ever hosted, there was like 4 or 5 cases of Kind Bars sitting on the ground that nobody wanted,
That's funny.
right? Like
I've had that experience.
if you've ever been to an event or on the backside, you have gotten free Kind Bars. And
I'm
don't get
not
me
a huge
wrong,
fan. I'm actually not a huge fan, so I don't usually pick any up. But nothing.
and that's how most people feel. So like at the end of every event, there's always like a few boxes of those things being thrown away. Like why? Why are we like why? So yeah,
Yeah,
I
the
think
superfluous spending is so widespread that I think there's a lot of rethinking to be had. I mean, I
totally.
used to say, I used to joke that whoever likes to say that government is inefficient has never worked in the private sector, because, as you just described, like, private sector excesses, if nothing, on government, like, you sort
Right.
of like largesse. Like, these folks, the C-suite types, they spend like it's the apocalypse.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Ironically. Yeah.
exactly.
I mean, yeah, I think it's great. Like I've been talking with Jennifer Crawford who does the DC Podfest, and she was like, I don't think I'm gonna do it. And then we had like an hour and a half long call, and like we like completely flipped our minds about it and got really excited. And I really like put my Molly like inventor, visionary cap on again for the first time in a while, and it just felt really good. I'm like, oh, I think I'm back a little bit, and I'm like developing software to like create digital products for conventions to replace that need. I'm like developing software to give restaurants an ability to have people online order and get delivery so they can cut out like Uber Eats. Like I'm in my create mode and I'm like
Well,
using all my
that's
resources.
That's funny you mentioned that, because the reason I texted you right after this thing kind of hit very seriously, and then we never kind of got in touch, was just that, because I just was like, I mean, obviously I don't need to, you're a great businesswoman, but I was just like, this seems like the ultimate time for your type of business to expand and rise to the occasion of like providing a virtual space in all different forms, not just in
Totally.
the podcast form. So I'm glad to hear that you're doing that.
Yeah, man. Cause that's who I am at the core, right? Like I'm a helper, I'm a connector. Like that's what I've always done. And so that doesn't change now. In fact, if anything, like this is my time to shine, right? Like I wasn't supposed to live more than 20 years. Like there's no medical explanation as to why I'm alive. So like my come to Jesus moment happened like a decade and so ago, right? Like I'm just like, I can't believe I'm still here for real, like I'm just gonna make the most of it. I'm not afraid to die. Shit, I've faced my maker plenty of times with spinal surgeries and everything else, right? So for me, I'm like, no, we're gonna make it, right? Not everybody, of course, but the numbers are looking a little bit more optimistic, especially for DC. No disrespect to anybody else, but DC's way down on that list. I'm like, yes.
Well, and not only that, I mean, even in the worst hit places, it's kind of less than the more severe forecast, but exactly because of the extreme measures that people have been taking.
Yeah, and good for us for listening for once.
Yeah, I think it was too late. I think it could have been, less bad if policy had been more proactive.
Yeah.
And I think there's ample room to blame the Trump administration for tons of mistakes. But at the same time, when you look at the European outcomes not being great either, you got to wonder, like, and there's a lot of blame to go around as far as lack of leadership.
Yeah, exactly. And and I think right now it's just like we just got to figure out like what's next, right? Like we got to figure out and I mean, I think there's still a lot of unknown, right? Like I'm interested to know, you're probably looking at a lot more numbers and like a lot more information than I am, right? Like I'm just thinking about like the adaptation, because like things are never going to go back, right? And I think there's a lot of benefit, like retooling conventions. Like I've been talking about this all week. Like I spent like all the money I would have used to go on vacation this year, I spent like going to a podcast convention in Atlanta and 2 of them in Orlando. And you know what? Like I spent $1,500 to go to Orlando, and like that kind of sucks.
And sometimes
I don't want to go to Orlando.
And sometimes like conferences, like useful and whatever. A lot of times it's mostly stress and exhaustion, and you don't look forward to it, and you're exhausted when you get back. And I mean, it's fun like once or twice a year, but when your job takes you to like a conference a month or more, it starts to get like really exasperating. Which I had that experience for a few years.
Yeah, and I think like just getting excited about improving things there and doing like remote podcasting and like servicing restaurants. Like if I can develop like a new website or something that I can like give to restaurants like hella cheap, and I can just be like, boom, here's like now every restaurant in the city can hire their own delivery people, which is better for public health. It's less
100%.
people come, right? There's all these benefits. So like if I can give back in my own way.
And obviously the big companies haven't gotten their act together at all as far as like making Instacart viable or making DoorDash. I mean, these things are totally floundering. So
and like Uber Eats and those guys take 30%, man.
Exactly.
Like, you know how hard it is.
No, and not only that, they take 30%, and they kill their work. They destroy their workers' lives with their app control, and because they do that, your food is inevitably. I mean, I've never done those things because your food is always super cold because. It's not like getting delivery from the restaurant. It's like entering a line of deliveries that the person is like 5th or 7th on their hellish list. And you're like, I don't want to get my cold ass pizza, excuse me.
No, totally. Yeah. I think I think we just had, cause I don't think, things are not going to go back. Things are going to be different. But they're like, how many other times in history have we been through this? Like maybe not specifically, right? But like it's a little like American ignorant to be like, this has never happened before. Like, no, man, Great Depression. Like no, like we have been through like plagues and we
just not in our lifetime. I mean, I guess there's been like, there have been plagues and there have been regional plagues in Africa, and there's been famine. There's been I mean, it's really no different in terms of a local experience. The local experience of a Syrian war is much more severe, right, than the global pandemic is to all of us, even if the global pandemic garners all the attention. So.
Yeah, so I mean,
I have to tell you the one thing, despite my optimism, and I really enjoy having my daughters at home. Like I have a 5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. It's just for a dad who never got like, paternal leave because it's non-existent in the States. This is like
Right.
so amazing. I get to go for walks with them, and I go ride my skateboard with my daughter, rides her scooter. I mean, it's just absolute bliss, in the middle of the day. Like it's amazing. And but the one downside I could so far for me is like, I miss restaurants. I like going and the social experience of sitting and whatever. But like shows, I think are the biggest thing for me. Like as a music fiend, like I think you are, like going to a live show, you can't really beat that. And
No.
it's gonna take a while before I was talking. I saw a report that mentioned that uh, we're unlikely to have live concerts or conferences or anything of that nature safely until the fall of next year. So it's really like a 2-year proposition. And when you look at the reopening in Wuhan and places like, it's not just like, hey, carte blanche, you're off. Like people get
Right.
people get these 2-hour a day passes to go into the street.
Oh my
Like,
God.
yeah, you have like a red car that gives you 2 hours of like street time. That's what Wuhan is like. When people talk about reopening the economy, they think like, oh yeah, we're just gonna flip a switch. Like this is not normal, and we're not even
No.
close to anywhere. Like as far as China and South Korea, their testing levels, like, have you seen how those people how they clean their streets? Have
Yeah,
you
yeah,
ever
yeah.
have you ever seen a street cleaning operation like that in New York? I haven't.
No.
They're not
No.
doing that. We're not on the same level. Have you seen that? Have you ever seen a picture of an American getting swabbed at a parking lot? Like by not, it doesn't happen. Nobody's getting tested. Like
Right. Right.
we're
It's
so behind. We're a third world country, like for all intents and purposes. So
that's a deep thought right there. We are in a
hundred
lot of
percent,
ways. In a
hundred
lot of
percent.
ways.
In terms of our healthcare system, I mean, there's like a first world economy for people who can afford it, but most Americans live in a third world type system, or at least a system that's like edging in that direction. That's underdeveloping. That's going, backward rather than forward.
Do you think that like I mean, the housing, I feel like the real estate market is going to change. Maybe not the housing market as much. You're probably more knowledgeable, but definitely commercial real estate, right? Because a lot of people are like about to call their landlord this week and be like, "Bro, we ain't coming back,"
That's a
right?
great point.
And so it just makes me wonder, like, are they gonna have to like retool mortgages? Because you can't just like, if the values drop, then how is that? Do you have any ideas on like what that's actually gonna look
Well,
like?
first of all, it's already happening. Like there's already all kinds of Fed interventions by the Federal Reserve to like prop up financial markets that are already under strain on the expectations of like cascading bankruptcies and defaults in all
Right,
kinds of sectors, right? Including commercial mortgage, the commercial mortgage sector, which is huge. And so I think there are going to be varying degrees of like debt forgiveness and what they
mm-hmm,
call debt haircuts, where the lender only gets a certain, it's basically a form of default where you restructure the debt and only get paid
right,
whatever they can muster, whatever they can put together. It's kind of like a bankruptcy type of process. But yeah, there's going to have to be a wide economic reset of like what people owe one another. And it's already in train, but it's going to be a long-term process that gets kind of reevaluated over time, because this thing is going to hit in different waves. Like unemployment is literally about to be unemployment is currently at depression levels, Molly. Think about that.
right.
Like the last month was 4.4, but the actual reading is like 20 to 25% now. That's just
Totally.
in April, and that's like to be expected. But when you listen to Wall Street and these like optimists on TV, they're not optimists. They're wealthy salesmen. They're trying to sell you optimism because they want you to not sell stocks, because if you sell
Right.
stocks, then it hurts their business. And so they're out there saying, "Oh yeah, don't worry, it's gonna be a short-lived thing. We're gonna bounce right back." How? Why?
No,
And
no.
like on what basis? There's no basis to think that you can shut off the economy for several months and suddenly reopen it.
and reopen, right? Because like people are still not going to want to go out. I mean, I feel so. I was in real estate finance for 13 years when I was really young. Like I got into the industry at like 19 years old, and I was a loan processor and then a loan officer, and I learned a lot about life actually.
That's
Working in that
amazing. I
industry.
didn't know this about you.
Oh
We
yeah,
could
yeah.
talk about loan servicing for hours.
Okay, cool. So, and I mean, yeah, I spent 13 years and I mean, I bought a house in 1999. You know, I was there at the dawn. I mean, I got in the industry in 1995. So it was like the dawn of subprime lending. Like,
Wow.
I remember when 100% financing came out.
Wow.
Like, I was there, you
I
know,
want to
first
hear. I want to
Jefferson
hear your
mortgage.
stories.
Yeah, oh, dude, I got so many stories. I'm pretty sure the statute of limitations is up, but there's a reason
Yeah.
why I got out of that industry because I realized it was full of shysters,
Yeah.
you know. And
Oh
I
my
was like,
God.
I would rather flip burgers at McDonald's and have some
I
fucking
think car
integrity.
sales. I mean, used car sales is a lot more honest than that.
Oh my god. Like every guy who owns a mortgage company has a pinky ring and a mistress. It's like a cardinal rule. You're like, what did you all graduate from the same douchebag club? Like, what is this, right?
Trump, you.
Yeah, Trump you.
But
And I saw like so much widespread fraud. And it
yeah.
wasn't just like the lender, it wasn't just like the brokers and stuff. It would be like countrywide, you know? I'd be like,
Oh
"Hey,
yeah.
we're trying to get Mr. Smith approved." And then she's like, "Well, he needs to, send me a W-2 that says he makes 86,000." I'd be like, "Well, he makes 72." And they'd be like, "Molly, send
Send
me
me
a
a
W-2 that says
W2.
86,000." You're like, "The fucking underwriter at Countrywide just told me,
Wow.
right? What to do, right?" So it wasn't just like
Oh no, it wasn't a mom and pop. Like no, not at all. In
not
fact, the
at all,
mom and
right?
pops were following the lead of the big cheese. I mean,
100%.
they
And
read
then
the anatomy.
and then in every community, people were just screwing each other over. White people screwing white people over, and black people screwing black people over, and Spanish. I mean, it was just like it wasn't like it was equal opportunity. Bad stuff, right? And I love subprime because I loved it, right? Like I would close like 30 to 40 loans a month. I had the biggest office. I mean, I had like this dry erase board. All my files were color coded. I could answer any question about any file at any time. I had like dreadlocks in my hair. I was like smoking weed every day. They were like, "We don't understand you, but just like keep showing up," right? And I loved the thrill of like it's really
Could
actually
you tell people what was in each like
everything.
bundled thing?
Yeah, they'd be like, "What's up with the past report?" I'd be like, "Oh, boom, where's the appraisal? Okay, we're still waiting on the COO from the developer. Okay, the
Like
Brown file.
even when the
I need."
stuff was super secure, even when it got super securitized, or is that before they started splitting it up into like things that you could no longer recognize? Before there was like CDOs and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I was at the dawn of that, like the
Yeah,
coffee loans and all that
yeah.
kind of stuff, right? And when I got out,
Ninja loans, no income, no job.
yeah, you're like basically you just have to have a pulse. It's just called the pulse loan.
If
If you have
the
a
if
pulse,
you know, and
uh,
even that is probably negotiable.
yeah, seriously. And then
As long as you have a guardian with a pulse, we can
right.
make you sign.
Like whatever, just someone sign. And yeah, and then like when I got out, they were doing 125% refinances at like 18.99. Like, bruh, what are
And
we doing, right?
what year is this?
So I got in 95, I got out like 2008, 9.
Wow. Okay, so right at the pop.
Right? The writing was on the wall, and
Oh yeah, by that time the writing was like
way
splattered
on.
all over our bank accounts.
Yeah, and I mean, so I started when I was 19. I got a job
Right.
at First International Mortgage in Tyson's Corner,
Wow.
and as a receptionist, it was like me and a bunch of Persians. That's where my love for kebab from Moby Dick first was formed. But shout out to Moby Dick. But yeah, and so I love the industry, but I was really young. Like I didn't even know what a mortgage was at
Yeah,
19 years old. And like when I took that job, I was actually they didn't know this, but I was sleeping in my car in the parking garage for
oh
the
my
first
God.
month, right?
Wow.
And so I would leave after everybody else and I would show up before everybody else and I would like French shower in the bathroom.
Wow.
And I lived it. Now, the good news is I had a 1967 and a half Chevy Impala Roadster. And so if you're going to be sleeping in your car, that's a pretty fucking cool car to be, living in, right? Like
Roomy.
really big bench seat, like it was like a really nice tent,
But still,
I mean, yeah, I know, right?
a little scary.
But perspective is everything, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, I didn't really understand mortgages, but like by the time, a decade later, and I just saw so many fraudulent people and so much white collar crime and everything was documented, and I saw guys selling, unsuspecting people like 6 Baltimore row homes, like doing 6 different mortgages at the same time so they wouldn't I mean, I was just like, no, man, the writing is on the wall.
Yeah.
I want out. I want nothing to do with this anymore. Like, because in the beginning I was helping people, but at the end it was not that anymore, and I didn't want to be a part of that. And that's actually when I formed One Love Massive. Is in I had started doing parties in 2001, but it was like a side project. And I booked like Soldiers of Soja. That was the first band I ever booked at a strip mall bar in Alexandria. You know what I mean? Like, it was like very part time. But then after having like a neck surgery in 2006 and another one in 2009, I just realized I want to spend my life bringing people together and not tearing people apart. And that's when I went all full time in on One Love Massive 2009. And started like doing music stuff, and so then it was a full decade in DC of throwing events. But that was I had all kinds of other jobs too, but the real estate finances, I think, really what taught me like anything is possible, right? Because I would get underwriters to like close deals I would get a Bank of America to give me a verification of deposit at like 6:30 on a Friday night, and people would be like, "How the hell?" And I'm like, "Man, if you make people laugh and you say the right things, like, and like, hey man, they're gonna lose their earnest money deposit, they're gonna be homeless, like everything they own is in a U-Haul, like
you spoke their language, like."
Right.
You knew their terms, you knew what you were talking about. So
yeah.
that's always what matters too. So.
Yeah. And I like, this is like, 2005, I was like scanning the loan submission sheets and typing them.
2005 is literally like that's the crappiest vintage, I think. That's when it was like peak. Because 2005, I believe, is when housing prices peaked and then turned. And then 2006 was the beginning.
Yes.
It was like trembles, but like credit market troubles didn't start to emerge until 2007. That's when we financial reporters knew there was a crisis in the summer of 2007. The world kind of discovered there was a crisis by December when the Fed cut rates to 0, and then Bear Stearns failed in March. And that's when it became like a bigger thing.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a lot like at a young age, right? And like kind of figured it out. But so this is a really long journey to get here. But what I've never understood was front-loaded interest, right? Like, I just don't understand. Like, does our entire economy like rely off of that interest? Like how is that legal? Like, because that to me seems like the easiest.
What do you mean by front-loaded interest?
Okay, so like if you have a mortgage, when your amortization table, they front load all of the interest. That's why your very first mortgage payment, let's say it's $1,000, $10 of it is going to principal,
gotcha,
and the other 990 is going to interest, right?
Yeah.
So you pay for a year, and you're like, yeah, I just paid fucking $4,000 a month for 12 months. Like, I should owe at least like 30 grand less. And you're like, nope, joke's on you. You owe $2,000 less because you were only paying the interest, right?
That's right.
I've never been able to wrap my brain around.
Are you not able to like ask the bank to not have that be the case?
No.
Or is that every mortgage is
every mortgage is calculated like that way? And I've never understood that.
That's just a regulatory fix, right? That's just a rule. That could just Congress or the FHFA could just.
Because that would be a great start. Because if people were actually banging down the principal on their mortgages and not just interest, then like we would all be like way less debt heavy. We would actually own our homes. Like,
the debt heavy system works on every level within finance, because the more debt you can have, the more you can create money out of thin air, right? And so, the banks are highly leveraged, the mortgage servicers are highly levered, a lot of corporations have become highly levered. In fact, corporate debt is actually the biggest source of like sort of financial crisis potential and concern now, because corporations just borrowed like up the wazoo, and so we have record corporate credit. And now, if they can't make payments for a few months, and you have a lot of energy companies, especially, that are basically insolvent because shale is only like worth their while at $50 a barrel, and oil prices have tanked like 20. And so that's a huge area of concern.
So I'm really curious to see like what this actually looks like and how do we fix this, right? Because like you can't just keep putting off mortgage payments forever. Like, we still need to be able to make money. Like, that's not an answer.
No,
that's
you can't. Although you can have debt jubilees that are like, you can have it like a general suspension of payments. Like, if there's a cascading chain of defaults, you can envision a policy where like we all stop payment for 6 months and we all are okay. Like, if I owe you, you know what I mean? Like, and so it's about who gets screwed in the process. Of course, we have no smooth mechanism for such a debt jubilee. And so some people would get first in line to get paid and then others would get screwed. And that's where the problem lies.
God bless America.
But the idea behind the fiscal stimulus is now to actually give people some money, but it's way too little, and it's very palliative, and people need health care. They need a guarantee of future employment. This country doesn't have a social safety net. And so that means that we even lack a mechanism for delivering payments. Like, let's say, okay, we figured out that we're going to give $1,200 to everybody, but they can't even give the checks to people. And I know people who don't have an address. I know people who are like semi-homeless in my neighborhood. Like, I'm trying to figure out how they get their checks. Like they have to figure out how to get Cash App so they can maybe get an electronic deposit. And it's not, if you don't have a number with the IRS, like, this is a middle class focused stimulus in a sense. Like, really, really poor people don't even know about it or get it. And so it's kind
of and that reminds me, I don't know, I'm sure you're hip, but I tried to log into my bank this morning on my app and it didn't work. And I tried to go on my website and it didn't work. And then I went on Facebook and I noticed somebody else mentioned. So I posted a status and said, and apparently every single banking institution is locked down. Nobody can log in.
Is that right? Because everybody's trying to check for their stimulus payments at the same time? Probably. Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah, go ahead.
That's crazy.
No, you know what's even crazy? You know what's crazier? I'll tell you a story about that. I actually been meaning to write about it because this experience was it was literally like a financial crisis in the middle of a pandemic, like a personal financial crisis. So on the night of utter despair, that one Monday night where everybody went to the DC night where it was that one Monday where everybody went to the store. And I've been trying to do it earlier because we had enough lead time, but we didn't get to go. So my wife went that night while I watched my daughters, and she spent a couple hours. She got $400 worth of stuff because we were supposed to stock up for 2 weeks worth of goods.
Yes. Yeah.
And she got to the end of the line and her credit card got declined. Okay. So she calls me at home desperately, and I'm like, okay, it's fine. Can I come up? So thankfully they held our stuff there. Okay. Molly, I drove up there that was the moment we were most disgusted because we were still becoming aware of the virus. You didn't want to be anywhere near a crowd. And this Walmart was super crowded, and I was trying to stay distant from people. And my credit card got declined too. I tried my other credit card. It got declined too. I tried my Visa and my Amex, right? And I was like, okay, maybe it's the amount. They think it's a fraudulent charge, right? But I'm like, it's $400 at a Walmart down the street from my house, right?
That's not crazy at all, yeah.
So then I split the payment. Can you charge it in $200 chunks? The guy tried it. It didn't work. So I had to use my debit card and tap into my cash when I least wanted, and I had no certainty about life at all. And I had to spend $400 in cash, which most people don't even have.
Right.
To get my, it was and so it was literally a financial failure. It was just and I called one of the cards and they told me it wasn't. Oh, you don't usually shop at that Walmart with that card. I'm like, so the hell what? It's a pandemic,
There's a pandemic going on.
And it's the night that I need my card. And by the way, they were not accepting cash. I had to use my debit card. That's the only way I was able
to. And that's a whole other thing that I really don't like, this cashless crap that everybody's trying to pull right now. I hate it, honestly. I think it's so classist and terrible.
I agree. First of all, I mean, it screws homeless people over, right? You can never nobody ever has any change for anybody. I always think about that, including me. Sometimes I want to give people money and I'm like, shit, I don't have any.
Yeah.
But I just don't carry any. I mean, hopefully we can get them some Cash App or a card, but yeah, no, the cashless economy thing is the issue was that cash was actually seen as a potential transmitter of the virus. So maybe we need to rethink the actual, maybe it needs to be rubber cash instead of this clothy cash. If cash is actually a spreader of disease, then yeah, that's a problem. But
that's a different story.
Yeah, it's different. But the notion of just eliminating it is problematic, I think.
Yeah, and it's really crazy to just see that all the banks are shut down like that. I don't know, man. I just think that we've bought into the system our whole lives, right? And people are we're waiting on these stimulus from the government, but it's our money, and I think a lot 100%. Of people forgotten that. And it's
And
like,
Trump sticks his name on the checks, like, you know, and it was like, nah, dude, it's not your
right. Like,
thanks for my money back. But
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Because like if you're working, you're paying taxes. And so yeah,
yeah.
I think that
Even if
I
you're
don't
not
know.
working, you're paying taxes. You're buying stuff at the store, you pay
You're
taxes.
paying, that's a
Everybody, the
very
whole
valid
notion that
point.
like only like workers pay taxes, everybody pays taxes
That's a
in
great
some way or another, right? Like go to
totally.
CVS, there's a tax. You
Right.
know,
Everything you
the
buy, there's
homeless
a tax.
guy buys his donuts at the CVS, there's a tax.
Right.
What do you mean he
He's
doesn't
paying
pay
taxes
taxes?
too. 100%. That's so valid. Yeah. I'm really curious to see, what all this looks like. I know that I'm really shifting how I'm thinking, about where do I want to pay rent and do I want to live in DC anymore, right? If I don't like, I'm going to reach out to all my clients and say like, what really matters to you? Like, does it make sense for me to have a studio for the next 4 months that I can't actually use? I mean,
Good
and then
point.
when I can use it again, are my clients going to want to come in or are they going to keep rocking with my remote thing?
Yeah.
Because there's
It's
real
only gonna get
value.
better, right? It's only gonna get better. And like,
100%.
have you ever
100%.
have you tried not to like advertise for anything? Have you ever tried Blue Jeans?
No.
We use this software for my job for teleconferences for like the fancy teleconferences that are like,
Yeah.
and it's called Blue Jeans. I don't know if it's British, but they're London based. I mean, it was like the guy was in my living room. The
Right.
audio was absolutely just the crispest thing. I mean, this is pretty quality too, but like,
Yeah.
I mean, that was just amazing. It was like, and I just think it's just that game is just going to keep getting better, right? Because now people rely on it. I mean, so
Totally.
far so bad. I keep making fun of some of the backgrounds that reporters show up with on TV. Like they look like they're like in hostage videos, and these are like high profile reporters who are like MSNBC analysts. I'm like, you can't work with a little like you can't get a couple books behind you. Like,
Yeah.
Christ,
Come
how
on,
hard
man.
can it be? Or like Molly's awesome little. I mean, I wish I could have like
Well, I was like,
smoky blue in the back, but I'm not that fancy.
I got it. Well, it's been in my living room for a long time and it just worked out really well. And
Great.
yeah, I mean, because at first I was working at the kitchen dining room table, but then it's like, oh, well, now there's no separation with meals and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I had this living room that we really don't spend a lot of time in. And like now I want to be near a window. I want to be able to like look outside and like, now I have this setup. I'll take a picture and send it to you. But like, and then there's two couches on either side of me, so we can still lay on the couch and watch TV at night, and I can close my office down. But everything's set up. Like
Yeah.
I look like I'm having my own press conference. I have like 4
Yeah.
microphones and like 3
Yeah.
cameras all aimed at me, even though like only 1 or 2 of them are on. But I mean, I look like I'm like, yes, more questions, please, from the back. Like I could literally go crazy here. But I realized like a week in, I was
That's
like,
the
no,
way
no,
to
no.
do
I'm
it.
gonna go to the studio. I'm gonna get my fancy mic. I'm gonna settle
Yeah.
in because like this isn't going anywhere. And now I'm thinking about like turning my minivan into a mobile studio, like not for right now, but for once we get over the hump,
Yeah.
like, because maybe my clients don't want to come back to my studio. Maybe I just have like to go kits and I come to you. Right.
Yeah.
And maybe we do it in my minivan, or maybe I come into your conference room, or
Yeah.
maybe we just continue with doing remote because, like, if you can save that hour of the commute and parking in DuPont and all of that, then like maybe that is the right. So I'm like, I'm excited about I'm thinking about, man, I could actually like move to Leesburg and wake up and see like rolling fields and horses and shit,
That's a good point. That's a good point.
because now I don't, and then now I can service people in Tyson's and I can service people in Bethesda and I'll just come to you. It'll still be cheaper than paying rent, right? Because
That's a
like
great
right
point.
now, my responsibility is with my staff,
Yeah. That's
right?
a really good point.
So I'm excited about what that looks like and just
Well, to be
thinking,
honest, like one of the projects that I've been working on, I've been working on this video interview program with a outlet
yeah,
called Real Vision, and to be honest, the reason it got off the ground was because everything went remote. Because
yeah,
before they had this fancy studio in New York, the logistics of getting my guests to New York and myself to New York were like problematic. So I spent like 2-3 months trying to get this thing off the ground to no success.
right.
Now that we went remote, I'm recording episode 3 tomorrow, and like I'm off to the races. And
Yeah,
everybody loves it because they don't have to leave their house, and the people usually have decent setups.
exactly.
So it's pretty amazing. I'm pretty excited about
And
it.
And you know what? Like, I was thinking about when you talked about like live shows and stuff. Like, things will always be different, but once we get back to like not such a heavy band, then we'll start to see like pay-per-view style things where like the
Exactly.
full band will be there and it'll be Dolby surround sound, it'll be
And
great
it'll be
camera
super,
angles.
exactly, and super, and like definitely live, and everybody watching and be able to interact in some way. And even short,
Yeah,
and even like later on, like, maybe less crowded venues and more socially distant, whatever. Like, there's ways to do life stuff
or
that's like,
right, or maybe we get back to like house parties, right? And maybe
right.
you're like, dude, fucking, Wu-Tang is performing. Like, Molly, come over to
Yeah.
in a
And
month,
then
and we'll
and
have
then
a
you
barbecue.
do
And
like a boiler room style thing where you broadcast it so more people can participate, but the actual event itself is small, because it
super
doesn't make
small
sense to get 2,000 people together, because we spread disease for the next couple of years until
because
we have a vaccine.
exactly.
And
And
we're
you know
hyper
what?
spreaders. We're such good spreaders. I mean, I've heard
Right.
like epidemiologists talk about this in fascinating ways. Like, this is so much worse than 1918, Molly. Think about it. There were no people, you couldn't hop on a plane and get around. The
Totally.
population was so much smaller, right? Like, we are the vector. And actually, it's
Totally.
rich people who are the vector, because it's rich people who get from across the world back
They're
and
the
forth.
ones, yeah, hopping
And
and
it's the
skipping
poor
across the
people,
pond.
yeah, and it's poor people suffering for it, including the rich people, by the way, uh, who absconded to their second home vacation homes. I read this fascinating piece. I think it was in the Post, about people who go to the Hamptons or go wherever. But then what happens is they're putting a strain on those medical systems that I never even
Totally.
thought about. Like, and they're even less equipped to deal with. So if there's multiple cases, like, those places will be screwed, and the local residents are afraid of that. So
Totally. Yeah, I'm thinking about going down to the beach for like 5 or 6 days, like just to like camp or something like that. But like I've already decided that, and I mean I'll literally stay in where I'm at. I'm not going to like go to the actual beach. I just want to look outside and see like nature cuz I need that reset for myself. But I've already decided that like if I even feel remotely like a slight tickle, I'll hop my ass in the car and get right back to DC. Like I'm not gonna, I'm gonna bring my own food. I'm not gonna like take anything from that space, right? But
yeah,
like, yeah, if there's even a little like if I even feel a little sick, I'm gonna shimmy back up here to my home, right? Because you have to think about that stuff. We have to think about other people. I've been in my house for 5 weeks today
yeah, yeah. I
because
think
I
that's
went to
right for us too.
Orlando for that convention. And then I came back and the shutdown was the next day. And I was like, well, there's a chance I got it because I was just hugging a bunch of strangers and stuff. You know what I
Can
mean?
I can I can I introduce a guest?
Yeah. Oh
This
my
is this
God.
is Mila DaCosta.
Hi,
She's my
Mila.
my my podcast co-host. We have a little daddy-daughter podcast sometimes.
Oh, that's
Uh,
awesome. Hi,
yeah.
Mila. She's like, I want to be on the show. She's so cute. I love the curly hair. I have curly hair too. You just can't tell because I
She
blow
can't
my
hear
hair
you
out.
because I have my phones on, but I'll tell
Oh
her when you
yeah,
shut up.
she's so cute. Oh
Yeah.
man. Yeah,
So
I mean, and I love your attitude too, Pedro, about being able to spend more time at home. I have a good friend named John Bowen. He's like one of my like longest, dearest friends. He's designed all my logos. He's just a genius when it comes to design, and he does all the like branding and stuff. Like he designs trade show booths. He works with like 7 Up and Bacardi and like does these giant, right? So he's like, I don't know, man, like he's like, I finally just got out of debt, but it looks like I'm going back into it. But he's like, honestly, I'm super stoked I get to hang out with my girls. And I'm like, this is why I love you, JB, because like you're just such a positive, awesome person. And I think it is so important to remember like how valuable it is that you're able to spend time with your kids right now. Because like, I mean, I'm seeing it on social media. I'm like, is this the first time you've ever spent this much time with your child? And for a lot of people, that's a
it
yes.
definitely is. I mean, it's by definition it is, because you leave them at, if you work at 10 hours a day, as most people do in an office, they
Well,
spend way more time with their teachers than, it's not
yeah.
easy. My wife and I are juggling work, and we're kind of like, I have a call now, you have a call. But, it's
Yeah.
only been 5 weeks, like you said. And I think we're figuring out a rhythm.
It'll get better, and like new technology will come out. People will invent like a microphone, headphone, like things will come out like, and backdrops that you can buy that fit the exact Zoom call thing, or a camera that has a mic. Like it's all
And
someone's
even
gonna
virtual interaction eventually, where it's like more, you feel like you're actually in the same space with the other person, even if you're
Yeah.
not, right? I
Which
bet
is
you.
which is where we were headed anyway, to be
Yeah,
honest,
exactly.
like, this is gonna just push it a little faster, and so many of my friends are, like, having, like, Zoom calls with, like, multiple generations, and everyone is saying the same thing, like, "Why didn't we do this sooner?
Yeah,
Like, I'm
yeah,
about to do a Zoom call with my mom today, and, like,
yeah,
she's like, "I don't have Zoom. What is Zoom?" And I'm like, "Alright, we'll figure it out, we'll get there,
yeah.
mom."
My daughter
Um,
has Zoom. Mila has Zoom calls with her classmates, so a lot of
so
schools are doing it, which
crazy,
is really
you
cute.
know? But, I mean, remember back in the day when we imagined the future and we're like, "Yeah, you're gonna see each other, you can see the person you're talking to," and we thought that was, like and now here we
Amazing.
are,
Exactly.
like, doing it for real. Man, oh man, yeah, I don't know, some days are better than others, right? Like, some hours are better than others, but, I want everybody to be okay, but I'm excited about this shift. I'm excited about using less. I'm excited about, like, growing more food. I'm excited about, even just little things. I was thinking to them the other day, like, we took so many things for granted. Like, I'm doing some food orders from like a co-op and like Amish farm and stuff like that. And so you have to put your order in and then like it shows up 5 days later. And I'm like, I'm not used to that. Before, if you're going to a friend's house, you could just stop and pick up a bottle of wine. Well, like, and I think
Life
that's
shouldn't be
okay.
that easy because that convenience
No.
has a huge cost, right? That
a
convenience has a
hundred
huge
percent.
cost, and that's the point. I think
And
that's
we're
the point.
seeing it. Everyone
Yeah.
is seeing it, and I think that's what it takes. It takes for everyone to see it to go, "Oh shit, I was actually part of the problem."
And not to mention, I mean, literally, I mean, the environmental evidence from even this very short but extreme
Totally.
stoppage is just mind blowing. The first thing that got me was a NASA map of the Chinese industrial belt. That was just like it went from like these red, highly polluted, can't breathe, whatever, to like totally clear within like 2 months. Imagine if you just let it be. That's just 2 months, after like 40 years of just pounding
Pummeling it.
with like
Yeah.
toxins. And so now there's parts of like way deep into India where you can see the Himalayas now, like because you couldn't where you couldn't see it before. There's pictures of LA with no smog. Uh, there's
Right.
there's there's pictures of I mean I don't know Venice. The water is disgusting by definition because tourists and people living there. But now in Venice, it's like Caribbean water where you can see the fishies like swimming
Yeah.
in the canal. So like
No
surely
dolphins, but fish.
no dolphin, but but surely like I mean, to be honest, not to be like macabre about it, but I've started to think of like, on some level, it's like the Earth is telling us that we're actually the pathogen. Like the Earth is like, if you guys won't get your shit together and stop, I'm
Well,
gonna do it for
for
you. Like
you.
I'm not gonna let you kill me. Like, cause
It's like our
I'm the mother.
it's
Like,
like your mom when she's like, "Quit crying or I'll give you something to cry about," right? Like
I mean, yeah, it seems like, and actually, and it really is on a climate level, it is that because if you actually look at the science of how the virus came about, it came through these bats that are highly stressed because their environments are highly stressed. So they come
Oh.
into closer contact with other species that we end up eating. And also because they're highly stressed, they shed there's more viral shedding because that's what happens under stressful situations. So there actually is a climate change link in terms it literally is a pushback.
Whoa,
It's
that's
pretty,
some heavy stuff there, Pedro.
yeah.
Makes complete sense though. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
but it's like, well,
I know.
yeah, right? Like seems so logical now, right? Like yeah, I think I've said it before. I think it's like with, the political environment, like, I think more women are running for office, more people of color are running for office. I think this will also bring some more change. I think a lot more people are going to wake up. I think a lot more people are going to think about the future. Um yeah, it'll be really and the planet, right? Like I'm definitely evaluating everything that I'm using and everything I'm doing, my roommate's Venezuelan, so he likes to shame me all the time. And he's like, "Do you ever reflect on how much trash you create?" And I'm like, "It's your trash too, man. Like simmer down." But like, damn. You know what I mean? Like he is right. Like we take out a lot of bags of trash from this house and I'm not even sure how. I
Yeah.
really don't,
Oh,
you
tell me
know?
about it.
I'm like, "Who's making all this trash?" Oh, it's me. Um,
Well, the other thing it really highlights in like social inequality extremes, right? Because it highlights the people who still have to go to work,
Totally.
despite the virus, the people who have, like, my wife is, like I said, she's reporting on the retail sector and people saving and people worried. She was reporting on people. Guess what? What if you don't have enough money to stock up for 2 weeks of food?
Totally.
Because and what if your social security check didn't arrive for the 2 week period, that if the timing didn't work out with the one night when they told you to go out shopping, like, this is serious business. And I
It's
think
not fair.
racially also, I think the data that's been coming out showing
Yeah.
disproportionate amount of deaths in the Black community is just really frightening. I think is going to be important for us to study and figure. I mean, a lot of the reasons are obvious because of you know the social issues associated with race in this country,
Totally.
but yeah, the disproportionate burdens that people bear.
Yeah, I mean, well, and we've already got so many issues with that in DC with Ward 7 and Ward 8 and lack of schools and lack of hospitals and lack of grocery stores. And this is only going to exacerbate that. But I also am hopeful that it'll also like put a spotlight on it and like hopefully affect some change because it's just not sustainable and like something's got to give there. So, yeah, and I think the people that, like, show up right now and, like, really lead, like, Latasha Brown from Black Voters Matter, like, she's doing these, like, Black Girl Magic Awards every day or, like, she's just, like, teaching at Harvard and getting in front of people and just, like I think it's the people right now that are able to show up and, like, activate, right, and, like, really mobilize different communities and movements in the right way.
Yeah,
I'm hopeful that it'll affect some larger change.
yeah,
Um, I think it's kind of like Ferguson, right? I was talking about this earlier with somebody. I think like a lot of like well-intended white people were like, "What? Racism still exists?" Like,
yeah,
and then but what happened is it turned a lot of people into allies, right? People who were like outraged, for whatever reason didn't realize how bad it was. They did after Ferguson, and then this huge wave of change has been has evolved from that, and that's like the silver lining and all that. And so I like to think that this will also do the same, not just with like environmental issues, but with these like socio issues, right? Racism and
I hope so too.
the dispersity or the disparity of wealth, right? Like that's gonna because the reality is the 1% could like stimulate the shit out of all of us right now. Like they got enough money. Oh, I don't know how you feel about this. And like this really wasn't talked about a lot, but like shout out to Jack Dorsey for donating 29% of his wealth. Or is that like
I
a
didn't
PR thing?
know. I didn't know that he did that, but
Okay, so I don't know why this isn't a big deal, but Jack Dorsey literally just donated like however many millions of dollars, and it's legit 29% of his like net worth to like
cool.
fighting COVID-19.
Nice. Good for
I
Jack.
know.
Good
I
for
know.
Jack.
I know.
That
Just
that that makes up for so many of those like Twitter quirks that I've had to grapple with over the years, and all those bots that they fail to
right.
get
It's like,
rid
well,
of.
he
But
might still
yeah,
be
that's cool. I mean, that's
right.
cool.
I mean,
I
a
mean, I'm
third.
all for, yeah, that's
Dude,
nice.
that's putting your money where your mouth is for real, right? And so imagine if every other super billionaire, I'm sure as a financial person, you love that word. I'm just
I
making
do.
stuff up over here.
I do
But
because
like,
it's a,
if they imagine if they all gave 30% of their wealth, they would still have more than enough to like fly their private jets around the world as it burns and still be okay, right? But like, imagine if everybody and Jack Dorsey, like all things considered, is a new millionaire, right? Like how Twitter was 10 years old,
yeah.
right? So this guy who got all this wealth in 10 years just gave up like a third of it. Like, that's impactful to me and that's inspiring to me. And I hope other billionaires fall in line with that kind of mentality too, because that's huge.
I agree. Although my thing with philanthropy is that it's not a good replacement for like sound economic and social policy. We can't count on the goodwill of the
No.
occasional rich guy to deal with like things like global pandemics. And so what we really need to do is tax the crap out of the wealthy
Yep.
because they can afford it and the economy can afford it and there's no evidence that it hurts economic growth. And the wealthy are just the tax code favors them in so many ways that we could spend like entire days discussion on the loopholes and things that rich people can do. to that you and I cannot. And
Right.
so if we tax the wealthy adequately, we could use that money for all kinds of great stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, so so hopefully we will in the next administration. Let's
I
see.
think so. I think, and then Jack Dorsey, he said he's donating the 50 million or whatever it is, to educating girls. Like in particular, he's really dialing in on educating young women and like STEM programs and stuff because he feels like the economic future is in the hands of women. And I was like,
That's
oh shit, go
wonderful.
ahead, Jack Dorsey.
That is so cool.
I know, right? I'm
I think
surprised.
I agree with him.
Yeah, I'm surprised that's not getting more traction, man. I'll have
That's
to.
really cool.
I'm pretty sure I retweeted it, so I'll send it to you. But I think that's super cool. And yeah, you're right. Like it takes more than that, but it's a nice little notch in the humanity bedpost, right? It's like, well, at least somebody. It's just a little good faith. You know what I mean? It's just a little good faith, and I think right now that goes a really long way, right? Like shout out real quick to there's this Facebook group called Washington DC like sew masks or something,
Uh-huh.
and I don't even know how I got in there, and I like added my mom and stuff, and it makes me cry when I see updates in there. It's all these people from the area mobilizing to make face masks for first responders. Not a
That's so
single
sweet.
mask from that group has been sold. Every single one of them is donation. They've organized like drop off spots, supply locations, drop offs to like get them to the right people. They're organizing requests coming in for it. Is so fucking cool to see that, Pedro. And
Yeah.
like the only rule in the group is that you don't sell a single mask. And it's just that's the stuff that maybe that's part of where some of this hope is coming from, is just
Yeah.
seeing neighbors working together, seeing like getting back to this barter system and just going directly to each other. That's why I want to do this restaurant thing, right? Like if we can just eliminate these corporations from getting a piece of the pie, now it matters more than ever. And so even though there's a lot of like bad stuff going on right now, there's also like really good people stepping up, and that makes me feel really good about things, right? And I think the media is always going to show us the bad stuff. They're going to show us the world star version of the news, but the reality is like every minute of every day in every corner of the world, there are people just stepping all the way up, man.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the most moving things is these clapping sessions they have in different cities for the workers, right? Have you
Yeah,
seen those videos where the entire city opens their window and claps for the?
yeah.
And then I saw somebody that sent a Twitter message where they said, "I didn't think I could be any more moved by those videos," but then I saw the video of the doctors and nurses clapping for the cleaning staff in the hospital
Right.
and like all that. Because imagine that, like talk about front line. Imagine
Oh my
cleaning a
God.
COVID infected room as your job. And
Uh,
imagine how little you actually make as a tech or
right.
hospital cleaning staff, right?
Right.
I mean, it's just that's front line.
That is
So
frontline, man. So shout out to everybody who's doing that, and shout out to the people who are like organizing. And that's one, if I could give anybody advice, it's like if you're really good, like if you've lost your job or you just have a lot of free time, like not the people who are still like trying to get by, but if you're sitting at home, like maybe, like Airbnb and Uber, right? Like were developed out of the last recession. Maybe like some of these amazing brains need to figure out how to solve these type of problems. Like maybe, like don't sit around bored. Like watch all the episodes of Love is Blind and rewatch The Sopranos. Like get it out of your system. But then at some point, like let's start solving problems locally. Like I love how restaurants have redefined the supply chain, and now like we're like, okay, well if the groceries can't keep up, we can keep the restaurants in business this way. And I
yeah,
love that. I think it's
I do too.
awesome, right?
I do too.
And I think a lot of people, it's just going to redefine the relationships that we have with our neighbors and in our community. So yeah,
You mentioned another thing that just came to my mind when you said you mentioned the woman who's teaching at Harvard, because I feel like there's going to be a great equalization of education, right? Because there's a lot of
hmm
students suing now because they're suing their expensive colleges because they say that they're getting no more than an online college now. So why should they be paying full tuition? And that argument, while litigious and American, I'm sure they have some rich parents like leading that lawsuit. It kind of leads to like a greater question of like who is actually offering. I mean, because you go to Harvard, you go to a top school, like most lecturers are boring as hell, right? Like it's
right.
not like so. But now, like now, the big sell is going to be who's the most captivating lecturer. Like really,
Like
that's
Like, hey,
right?
Molly, I'm here to teach you some stuff. I'm gonna rock
Yeah,
the whole thing. What?
yeah,
What?
or or it just it seems to equalize the possibility of education in a way that like having to be at a campus for 4 years just was it makes it
Yeah,
totally different. So who knows? Maybe we could see some very needed price disinflation in
totally.
education costs. Like,
Totally. And I mean, imagine if like everybody could go to Harvard.
right,
The end result is we have a smarter nation. Like, I'm not
right.
sure how that's a bad thing, right? Like, we should want
Well, it's
everyone
only
to
a
go to
bad
Harvard.
thing. Well, that brings up a very good point, which is how professionals monopolize their own niches by through exclusionary practices. I once asked
Right.
a Harvard medical student on a bus one time. She was telling me about their resident hours, 24 hours on, 24 hours off. I'm like, how could that be? What is the root of that system that seems so unhealthy? Like, why did doctors do that? And she said, you know why? A bunch of white guys trying to weed out like people who can't like keep up with those schedules, women, minorities, immigrants, whatever. So the white
Right.
guys can have their jobs, and then like you have a shortage of doctors, which means they can command more money. It's their own version of monopoly power. It's hoarding knowledge, basically.
Which is
Uh,
such an American problem, right? It's like we've made like an elite education is elitist. Like you have to
yeah,
have money to get a good education. Like
yeah,
how?
and it's not. It's actually even worse than that because you have to have money just to get the stamp because there's not even faith that the education was actually good. Because
Right.
you could have gone
Right.
to Harvard and been like Barack Obama, or you could have gone to Harvard and been Jared Kushner. So there's not even actual faith in the quality of the degree. You know what I mean? You could have gone to Penn and been a successful businessman, or you could have gone to Penn and or to whatever the name of the school is and been Donald Trump. So
Totally.
it's like
Totally.
people don't even have faith. And now with the scandal about people actually buying the scores and the degrees, like the
Right.
degrees are literally not worth the paper they're printed on. So
Imagine
this is
that. Imagine if like universities were like DJs and like professors got taught on like or paid by like how many people like took the class,
yeah,
right? So you're like you
how many
had
people log on? Like let's see how many views you get on your lecture. Like boom. Let's
I
see how
feel like
many views you get. Put it out there. That's a pretty democratic metric, dude.
I'm
Like
just saying, right? And then the people who are like actually like teaching stuff
isn't that how
and like
musicians are working these days? I mean, the musicians have to survive on views, right? Like
right. So why shouldn't
why
they?
shouldn't a professor? I mean, well, because they're tenured and they like to protect their little turf too, because they want to get paid like 300K and like not have to work that hard, and
Yeah,
they like it.
I think we're gonna I love this idea of having like DJ battles, but with like professors be like, all right, today we have political science
But it's true. Like
up
I mean,
against,
but it's so true though, because I'm not just saying like I'm not talking about edutainment. Like I'm really not.
right, right,
But
right.
like there is an art to lecturing. There are people who are good at it and should be doing
Totally.
it. And there are 90% of the people who teach who should not. Like
Right.
my educational experience was. I mean, I went to good schools, but the experience itself was shit in the sense of like
Right.
how many cool lectures do I remember and like that stand out in
Right.
my mind? Like very few. It's the odd thing here and there, the occasional professor that's a specific name. Most people had no business teaching and they were shitty at it.
And and
So
and and yeah, what if you didn't need to go get like a 2-year degree? What if like you're 34
exactly.
and you want to get a job in finance and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna go take like a couple credits in
Right.
finance and get the information right
Right.
now that's
Yeah,
relevant to right now. Because like if I had gotten my communications degree in 1994, I'm gonna tell you
exactly.
how useless that thing would be right now. We were
Exactly.
just unrolling the fax machine. You know what
Exactly.
I'm saying? That was like a
Yeah,
big deal.
we got email my freshman year. In fact, one of my coolest job stories is I had a job that was made obsolete by the internet. My freshman year of college in 1994, I was the mailroom clerk, like whatever. So when announcements had to be made to the 4,000 undergraduates at the University of Chicago, they literally handed me a stack of 4,000 printouts, and I had to put it in each mailbox, right?
Right, 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 right. Like roll it up and stick
Yeah,
it. Yeah, yeah.
and like no, it was like boom, 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 but name A, B, C, D, and like suddenly next year there was email, like that mailroom was gone, my job was over, like so, yeah, totally
Yeah, I
different.
mean, I think
But
this
yeah,
just
so
makes
an
so much more
updated
sense.
education and not only an updated education, but one that is accredited and legitimized, and that like the bank that would hire you accepts as something that you've actually
Right.
done
Like I just
seriously,
did
as opposed to be like the Phoenix thing, like, oh, you went to whatever
right. You're like, I just did a 6-month intensive like business accounting through Harvard
through
and like I
Harvard,
have
yeah,
my
and it's
little
legit, and I'm working
my
with this
like
and that professor, like it's
yeah.
legit.
Yeah, like that would change everything, right? And then people would get excited about learning again, right? Which I think they still are. I think they're just disillusioned with the university system.
Definitely,
But I mean, if YouTube University has taught me anything, it's taught me everything. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like I get so I mean, right? People can take courses, which you're seeing like a resurgence right now. People want to educate
My
themselves.
daughter
People
and
want
I
to
are taking
do
Japanese lessons.
nice. Very nice. So yeah, man,
She
I'm this
remembers
is cool.
everything, and I can't remember anything. She can count to 100 in Japanese after 2 lessons,
That is so
and I
funny.
certainly cannot.
That is hilarious. Yeah, that's a good time to do that. Yeah, so that's why I kind of want to get away and go camping for like a week and just like, the I think the greatest gift that this pandemic is giving us is more time to self-reflect than ever before in our adult lives, right? Who do you want to like Bob Marley says like who you are, where you stand in the struggle. Like who do you want to be? And I don't mean like are you going to come out of this pandemic with like abs and a new degree? That's not what I mean. But like who do you really want to be? Like where do you want to live? How
Who
do
are
you
the
want to
friends you
spend
want to
your
catch up with,
time?
right? Like that's a big
Yeah.
thing. Like who are the people that first come? Like there's a lot of that. Like who are the people that I really need to touch base with and check in with? That's a huge kind of
Totally.
like a huge north star for people. Like oh, it's a
Yeah.
pandemic. Like who do I call?
Right. And we might be communicating with each other more than like we were
Oh,
before.
without a doubt, without a doubt.
Right? And so yeah, I think it'll balance itself out because I think there's a level like I have this whole theory brewing about these Zoom calls and stuff because I don't think any of us are this accustomed to looking at ourselves this
Yeah,
much.
yeah,
Right? So it's not so much of like talking to you, but more so like fuck, I don't want to be in front of this camera. You know
yeah,
what I
yeah, yeah.
mean? Like all fucking
Well, but
day.
there's got to be a way to create the seamless experience like you do in a where you don't actually have you can turn off your own camera and you like
Yeah.
the way you do in a studio. Like the anchor forgets that they're on, and that's I think eventually we'll get to that. I was actually
Yeah.
wanting to connect. I wanted to connect my laptop to my like TV so I could have people like larger and show up
Totally.
more like TV like.
Totally.
So I could actually feel like I'm conversing with them as opposed to figuring out where I should be looking at my
Yeah.
laptop
And
kind of
then I'm
thing.
like messing with my hair all the time.
Right. You're always fixing yourself. And so we haven't quite figured that part out,
Yeah.
but
We'll get
we'll,
there.
we'll get there.
We'll get there. Well, Pedro, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. I always enjoy hanging out with you. It's been nice to catch up. And I love all this stuff we talked about with education and mortgages. There's a lot of good stuff in there. So
Me too.
I'm excited to see like what happens next and definitely stay in touch and send me the links for the email me the link for the show that you're doing
Definitely.
so I can put that in the description of this thing. And
Will
yeah,
do.
man, I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out. I always love seeing you and
It's my
uh,
absolute pleasure.
yeah, man. And I submitted our application to speak at Podcast Movement, but I don't know if that's happening or not. So I'll keep you
Maybe
informed.
remotely.
I mean, maybe if so, we can do like the most lit presentation ever. You know what I mean? Especially if we don't have to go there. So I'll keep you posted on that. But have an awesome day. Thank you so so much. And yeah, if you are still with us here, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. I really value being able to take the time to connect with other people on this show, and hopefully, I have provided a little bit of comic relief for you guys. Nobody else on LinkedIn Live is talking about getting arrested and all the other silly stuff that I talk about. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. I hope you guys all have a great day, and we will see you real soon. All right.